What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be talking about 3 tips to be an unguardable wide receiver. So we're going to be talking about 3 specific things you guys can do off the line of scrimmage, at the top of the route, and just overall football IQ-wise to make you an unguardable receiver. So I hope this video gives you guys some value, but if you're a wide receiver, fellas, and you guys want to get faster off the ball, you want to be more explosive at the top of the route, you want to be more physical, have more explosion from your hips, more balance, more leg stability, knee stability to make those explosive cuts, check out that very first link in the description, fellas, for a 2-month-long wide receiver gym bundle. So it's going to be an 8-week program with specific workouts planned out day to day in a specific booklet. So we give you sets and reps, rest periods, conditioning workouts, and all the above for 8 weeks specifically for the wide receiver position. It's not just stuff you can Google, look up. It's stuff that's going to actually help you at the wide receiver position on the field. So very first link in the description, fellas. Hope you can check that out. Let's get started. So very first thing you want to do to make you an unguardable wide receiver is to make all your routes look the same, right? So everything that you do has to have a purpose. Everything you do has got to look similar, right? So when I come off here, Diggs is going to be running what? A comeback and go, right? So there's 3 specific points that have to look similar, okay? So this has got to look, number 1, like a fade, right? So how I make my routes look like a fade, I got to stay in stride. My shoulders and my hips got to stay fade, and my eyes got to be looking straight forward, right? We got to try to make this DB think that it's a straight up comeback. Everything about this has to look like a comeback. I've ran a comeback before. It's got to be an identical clone to what I just ran on this comeback if I've ran this before to set it up. And same thing if you're running a little stutter go, you're running a post corner, you're running just a straight up comeback. There's got to be an element of selling the route to your overall route, right? So when he comes off here, he's running, attacking the distance, gives this little pressure step to close the distance with the DB, and then bam. He kind of slows down on this leg before he snaps down, which is something that you kind of want to try to avoid, but especially when we're trying to get out of this thing in a clean 3 steps right here, or 4 steps as he likes to take on this comeback and go, you kind of got to almost change your speed just a tad, right? Because it's very tough to get out of it in 3 steps when you're running full speed. Not a lot of people can do that, right? There's very few receivers that can run full speed 15 yards downfield and get out in 3 steps. It is possible for sure, but we got to make sure that especially on this one, we can't be taking a million different steps, okay? So now we got to make it look the same, right? So I drop my hips. I give that same explosive drop. I'm dropping my weight. I want to make this DB think that he's playing it well. I want to make this DB think that he's driving on it. So to sell the comeback, I actually have to get my hips down this break, right, on this comeback and go. So he snaps. This step right here is the most important step to making your routes look the same, or to make this comeback and go look like a comeback, because you see how he pivots that step. When you guys snap, the second step always wants to be a pivot. If you take 3 more steps after, that's fine. Not in this case, but if you were to run a straight up comeback, that's fine. But the hips have got to sell, because that's where that DB is going to be watching. He's going to be watching my hips, going to be watching that number, going to be watching that torso. So I snap on the outside, snap, pivot, hook, and now I'm driving off of this to throw. And you see how much he's actually turned with his upper half, and he's actually stepping down that 45 to get this DB to commit. Everything about this looks like a comeback, and even if it looks like a lazy comeback, that DB still thinks he's got it, because I pushed the I closed the distance, I pushed vertical, and I was able to drop and make it look the same. So you see when he puts the brakes on right here at that 4th step, we get this DB to commit. And if I can get this DB here, I just got to keep my head down. I got to pump my arms. I got to really accelerate and drive out of this thing to widen the distance with him, so I can make this play over the top. So the first tip to being an unguardable wide receiver is to make sure that all your routes look the same. From a slant route all the way to a comeback and go route, everything has got to look like a fade at some point. And then when you're running, obviously, a double move, you got to be a salesman. Everything about this route has to say comeback. Let's watch the thing full speed one more time. Great job dropping. Great job pivoting those hips. And then obviously putting the brakes on to accelerate upfield. Ball was a little overthrown, a little bit of miscommunication, but ultimately that's a hell of a route. So now, second tip to being an unguardable wide receiver is understand your opponent and understand leverage and the routes that work against that leverage. So we're going to be running a post route here against inside shade off man. Now, this is one of the biggest mistakes that wide receivers make, is they don't know how to attack this type of coverage for this specific route. So watch it full speed. This is a perfect example of what to do. I'm not the biggest fan in the world of a tempo change on like a hard post bang 8 like that, because I think that sometimes you get a little too creative with that and it might waste a little time with the quarterback, but ultimately the principle of this is correct, right? So I got this inside shade DB right here, right? So what is the sole purpose of him being inside shade? To force you to the sideline, right? He wants you to run out here so we get right into your hips so the quarterback has like a yard to make a throw, and that's an impossible throw. That means that he does not have any help in here, right? And so I know this is one-on-ones, but there are situations in one-on-ones where DBs will work outside shade just because to get used to it, just to get used to that man coverage, that almost like 2-man type of deal. So as a wide receiver, what a lot of people think is that when you got an inside breaking route against inside shade, oh, I just got to attack his leverage and square him up, right? What a DB is coached to do when a receiver attacks his leverage is he is coached to keep his leverage. So if he keeps his leverage to the inside, then you got to go run a post. We can't just change the route and go run to the outside. We're going to have to break on the post, and then we're going to run right into him, because if he's disciplined and he keeps his leverage, dude, the play's over before it starts, because that's how a DB assumes that we are thinking, that we're just going to attack his leverage, square him up, then try to make this move, and then we're done, right? So as a receiver, I got to understand that I want to attack his outside shoulder because I'm trying to get him to turn his hips. You're probably not going to be able to restack a DB in this case because, again, how far off is he? He's about 5 to 7 yards off. So I got to make sure I push to the outside. I get his hips to turn like this because I'm selling fade, and then I can slip back underneath, because there comes a point where he's got to commit to the fade. A DB has to commit to this vertical portion of the route because he's not just going to let you go run right by him. And then if he wants to just sit to the inside and be disciplined, as people like to say, then the next time I do this, I'm going to give a little tempo change, and I'm just going to take off on a fade. We're going to eventually make him turn his hips. So you got to make sure that we understand what a DB's leverage is. So now let's talk about it. If he has an outside breaking route, yeah, you'd want to square him up, right? Yeah, I'd want to attack his leverage because he'd keep his leverage to the inside. Then bam, I just created this ocean of space for me to accelerate and go run and win that race back to the ball for my quarterback. That's an easy freaking throw for that quarterback. But when it's an inside breaking route against inside shade press, I got to do this. Same thing if he was outside shade and I had an outside breaking route, I'd want to attack his right shoulder, try to get him to turn those hips so I could slip back underneath. And then if he was outside shade and I had to run this post, I'd square him up, he'd keep his leverage, then I'd create a little bit of space or more space for that quarterback to make that throw. So this is a perfect example of what to do as a wide receiver and how to understand leverage. So the second tip to being able to create separation, being an unguardable wide receiver, is understand your opponent and understand the leverage he's trying to keep. So great job. That tempo change for sure helps in this. Just make sure that we know the situation and we're using this in the correct situation. So now, biggest thing I want to talk about here is this is, I believe, a number one receiver. His name is slipping me right now, but he's number one receiver, I believe, coming out of high school this year. And I want to talk about pad level in all situations when you're facing a DB who's physical. So the third tip to being an unguardable wide receiver is focus on your pad level. So let's watch the thing full speed. So he kind of sets him up as like a sluggo route here against press. And the biggest thing I would say is when a DB is going to be getting hands, trying to get physical on you, you got to stay in an explosive position. So you see when this DB is trying to get hands, trying to jam, where's this receiver at? He's in a great pad level with his upper half. He's got a strong base. You guys got to understand that this is where the game should be played as a wide receiver. You are quicker in this position. You are more like sturdy in this position, and you're more explosive, right? Because a lot of DBs are looking for that receiver who's scared. They're looking for the receiver who's timid, right? Who lines up, his chest is straight up in the air, his base is super narrow, he doesn't drop his butt down at all. And then so they could just choke you, get lower than you, and then knock you 5 yards back in this direction right here, right? So we got to make sure as a receiver, I don't let that happen. If he shoots hands, that's fine. I'm in a position where I could swat this thing off. You see how he just shrugs it off and swats him by. He gives him this move to the inside, sets him up here, and now 3 steps on this slant, and you see the whole time he's in this explosive pad level position. I know it's a little blurry because it's a fast clip, but this is where we need to operate as a receiver. To be unguardable at the top of a route, you got to be in a low explosive position to be able to drop your hips, to be able to get in and out of a break. You don't want to be too low to where it restricts your stride length, because obviously you want to be in stride to sell vertical on all routes and all that good stuff. But when you're off the line, dude, you want to be operating in this quick position. Even if you're a bigger guy, maybe you can't get as low as this, you still got to be in a good pad level, because again, as a bigger guy, you're a big target. But if you know how to use your size correctly, you know how to actually play big, but also stay in that explosive spot, that's very, very tough to stop. A DB who gets hands, that's not going to be a huge issue, right? So that's a great example here of what your pad level can do, how it can explode you out of the route and ultimately create you separations. Watch the thing again, full speed one more time. Great job setting him up on this sluggo route, staying in that pad level so it shoots him upfield and he could get a burst off of this route. All right, guys, we want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to leave those in the comments below. I will get back to you as soon as possible. Always appreciate the feedback. Always appreciate the questions you guys ask. And just again, I want to thank you for that. And also, fellas, 8-week-long wide receiver gym training program to help your specific game on the field. Check out that very first link in the description, fellas. 8 weeks of workouts to help your speed off the ball, explosiveness at the top of the route, being able to explode from your hips, and all the above. So very first link in the description. Hope you guys could check it out. I'll see you guys next time.